Hi, I'm Rick Titus, the host of Drivers Talk Radio. You know, according to Toyota's advertising, their new Tundra is the truck that, well, is changing it all. Man, if it was only that easy. You know, truck leadership is really the result of an unwavering commitment to continue to develop your truck. Case in point, better chassis, better suspension, better interiors, and certainly better powertrains. But most importantly, truck leadership is defined not by advertising slogans, but by really understanding and knowing the truck market. Well, over 60 years of F-Series history and 30 years of truck leadership has taught Ford how to build America's best truck. Over the course of the next few minutes, we're going to take you inside the F-150 and, of course, Toyota's first attempt at building a full-size truck. We'll let the trucks speak for themselves. So please join me as we take you under the skin. I call this test a lie detector. I love these. A head-to-head comparison so you can see who's really telling the truth. Now, I understand that everybody builds a great brochure, but not everybody builds the best truck. On my right is the frame out from underneath the all-new Toyota Tundra, Toyota's first attempt at building a full-size pickup truck. On my left, the truck leader, the Ford F-150. These frames are critical. They are the backbone of the vehicle, and they are a great place for some manufacturers to remove or save a lot of money. Unfortunately for you, that isn't good news. Let's look at these two frames, and let's see how they stack up together. Right up front, this is the suspension pickup point for the front end. It's critical to the long-term durability, handling, and obviously ride quality of the vehicle. And at first blush, that looks like a pretty strong structure. The spring sits in here, the upper control arm sits here. Looks pretty big until you see how the leader does it. A monstrous front structure for the spring and control arms, and notice the control arms are actually gusseted, so a bolt travels all the way through and is fully supported. Even the method of manufacturing the frame can have a big difference in what it costs to manufacture. By going hydroforming, making sure that the frame is actually formed with a liquid, it stays stronger and is not welded together, as opposed to taking two pieces, mandrel bending them, and welding them, big cost savings, stronger frame. Maybe that played an influence on the fact that, well, the F-150 got both passenger and driver front 5-star rating. Toyota, driver and passenger, 4-star. That probably played a role. How you mount the body sounds trite, but think about it. Do you really want to drive a truck that squeaks and rattles, has a cab moving around, has the doors walking around? I don't think so. Toyota, 4 body mounts. Saves the money of not adding 2 more. Ford, 6 body mounts to put that body solidly on the frame. Cross members. Now, this is unglamorous stuff, but this is critical to what you get in terms of value. Notice the size of this big, beefy, fully enclosed cross member. And note, it comes through the frame rail and is welded on both sides. So too is this one and the one that follows. Toyota, different approach. And this was all the rage 10, 15 years ago. An open cross member, stamped piece, riveted in place. Not all the way through the frame, on the back side only. And again, with that cross member, and that cross member. And a couple of interesting points here. A lot of effort went into naming this thing, so I guess it would sing in the brochure, but what did you really gain? They call it triple tech. I guess because they're using, well, about 3 different methods to actually build the frame. I don't really know their logic, but it has a couple of inherent drawbacks right out the front. It's not nearly as strong. Oh, and this is cool. It actually traps road dirt and salt right in its own frame rails. I don't know what you call the counter to rust prevention, but apparently they can't wait to sell it to you. Now, let's look at the real strength and how it, in the end, affects the vehicle total overall. Chad, Dave, I'm going to get you guys on out here. I'm going to go ahead and remove one of the legs of support. Both these frames are at level. I'm going to pull one leg of support out, and let's just see how much the frames sag on their own weight in what we call torsional stiffness. Thank you, guys. As you can see, this long lever drops quite a ways on the Ford F-150. Thanks, Dad. Thanks, Dave. Appreciate it. As you can see, a very small drop, despite the fact this is a heavier frame, albeit a lot stronger. But let's go more real world. Let's really take this lie detector and apply it to how you use the vehicle every day. Here's what I'm talking about. We added 270 pounds of load on a very long lever arm. I'm not going to kid you. A fair amount of load, to be fair. Let's see what it does, and we'll measure it in thousandths of an inch. We'll go to a drop. Jack is clear. Less than an inch, really closer to 3/4 of an inch of total twist deflection as measured right here at this point. Okay, let's do the same thing to the Toyota. 270 pounds. We'll drop the frame on down. Again, measured at this exact point, Almost 3.5 inches of deflection. Now think about this for a second. Do you really want to drive a vehicle that this could be happening 1,000 times every time you drove the vehicle? Does that add or enhance to the long-term durability of the vehicle? I don't think so. If you can imagine this, in the brochure it says, this is the truck that's changing it all. Really. If you don't mind, I'll take the frame from underneath the truck that's been leading it all for 30 years. Please, excuse my grammar, but I'm calling this segment When Parts Ain't Just Parts. We're looking at the front suspension system on the Ford F-150, and I can tell you there are no more critical design elements for components on a truck than right here. Now, a lot of people could look at this and misread it, and I'll show you in a second how Toyota did. The key elements here, upper control arm, which is tied into this massive support and spring perch. Then, of course, what they call the hub carrier, or upright. Big responsibilities here. And then the lower control arm. This is what takes most of the impact mass and can have a big influence on handling. Now, this is a case where the parts don't always add up to the sum of real well engineered. Case in point. This is the lower control arm off the Toyota Tundra. It is massive, and if you didn't really understand its responsibilities, this might look like the way to build it. The problem with that is, that's what they call high and unsprung weight. I won't get into the engineering of it, but it's important to lower the weight as best you can to help control wheel motion. When you've been building trucks for 60 years, you realize there's a better way to do it. Though it's more expensive, Ford uses cast aluminum. Now, there's a bunch of advantages. A massive control arm, significantly lighter, and aluminum will eat or snub road noise and frequency. See how this starts to work? And by having a lower unsprung weight, improves handling. Now, we've all played the game of telephone sometimes in our life, and you know that by the time the message usually gets to the third or fourth person, it doesn't even resemble what was originally said. I got to tell you, telephone went awry at Toyota. This is the upright or hub carrier for the Toyota Tundra. That's right. That thing's massive. This thing's spindly. I don't get it. See, when you're the leader in the truck market, you understand the importance of this component being durable. So, this is the F-150. You can see the difference in the approach. They overkilled the bottom parts, underkilled the middle parts, and totally missed the point. And here's an interesting detail. Trucks are expected to have massive wheels, big tires, and potentially go off-road. To make sure we support and carry that weight properly, 6 lugs. Toyota, 5. You know, for a company that's allegedly going to change the game, you might want to find out what game it is you're playing. We're at Ford Motor Company's Arizona Proving Grounds, and a piece of pavement they call Silver Creek. One of the baddest pieces of pavements, in my opinion, anywhere on planet Earth. Now, we're here to do a direct head-to-head comparison of leaf springs. Oh, it doesn't sound glamorous, but when you understand what leaf springs do and what their world's like, you're going to have a whole newfound respect. See, leaf springs are the load tolerance to, guess what? Cargo and trailer, and they work hard. That was 25 miles an hour. Can you imagine how hard all that's working at 70? Oh, throw in a trailer and some cargo. Now, this begs an interesting question. What kind of bolts are actually holding that rear suspension on? Well, to give you an idea, here's the bolt the Toyota Tundra uses. Looks pretty big until you understand how Ford leads the market with that bolt. I ask you, which bolt do you want holding on the rear suspension? Quite clearly, at Toyota, the spirit of truck has no meaning. Case in point, tires. Sounds odd, but consider this. Toyota doesn't even offer an LT tire option. LT, it stands for light truck. Now, Ford makes LT tire options available on several models of F-150. And for the buyer who intends to use the truck to its full capability, it means that Ford is offering them as an option a broader margin of safety and durability. See, at Ford, the spirit of truck has meaning, and they don't expect you to have to go to a tire store to find it. The fluids you see in front of you are referred to in the wintertime as antifreeze, and interestingly enough in the summer as coolant. I refer to them as a fundamental indicator of just how much the manufacturer wants to help you protect your investment. Let me tell you what I'm talking about. When you drain the radiator of a 5.4 liter V8 F-150, you get nearly 21 quarts of coolant or antifreeze. Next to that sits what you get when you drain the radiator on the 4.7 liter V8 in the Toyota Tundra. As you can see, there's nearly a 50% advantage in extra protection that comes standard with your F-150. You tell me who cares most about you and your money. You've all heard the phrase, what goes up must come down. Couldn't be truer than talking about rear suspension systems. A lot of activity, a lot of responsibility back here. Think about it. This engineering and design is responsible for traction for stopping, for acceleration, certainly to handle the load variables of, well, a lot of weight in the box, certainly a lot of weight on the bumper, handling and ride quality, all affected by design right here. Now, when you start talking about best in class for cargo capacity at 3,050 pounds, or best in class 11,000 pound towing capacity, and if you understand where all those loads ultimately rest, it's right here on this bearing surface. To make certain the durability is actually there, Ford uses a more expensive, what's called a roller bearing. What we're talking about is it's longer in its length, and it helps distribute the load more evenly over the axle. Though it's less expensive and apparently very effective on small trucks, Toyota has stuck with the ball bearing, which pins those loads in a very small load area. I guess it worked on the little ones. I suspect they're hoping it works on the big one as well. Sometimes there's logic out there it's just hard to relate to. Case in point, Toyota took forever to finally come to the full-size truck market, and on their very first attempt decided to use other people's old-style technology. What am I talking about? I'm talking about on their 4x4 system. There is a more modern way, a more sophisticated way that's a benefit to the customer to actually make these systems work. See, we know on average that most people use their 4x4 systems between 10 and 20%. However, if you've got this style of disconnect system for it, you're essentially using it, well, all the time. Oh, you're not getting the benefit of it, but you're driving along all the driveline components all the time, every inch, every mile. See, Ford has a different theory on this. It's called, well, modern technology. Okay, this is where an investment in technology really benefits the customer. Here's what I'm talking about. By recap, remember, in everybody else's four-wheel drive system, even when you're in two-wheel drive, you're still rotating that U-joint, that axle, and that constant velocity joint. Ford takes a different approach. By inventing a thing called a wheel-end disconnect, they're the only ones to use this kind of technology. They position this piece of hardware outboard of the constant velocity joint. So if you're driving down the highway in four-wheel drive and shift on the fly back into two-wheel drive, guess what? You'll automatically stop rotating this CV joint, that axle, and that U-joint. What's that do for you? Well, it improves fuel economy, it certainly improves durability, enhances reliability, and remember, servicing those puppies is really expensive. For Toyota's benefit, I want to tell you, that's what leadership looks like. I find it interesting how some companies choose to advertise their products. Let me give you an example of what I'm talking about. If you think back on Ford F-150 ads, it's always about the virtues of the vehicle. I mean, these guys have been building trucks for 90 years. They've been building the F-Series for 60, and they've had full-size leadership for 30 years. I guess when you're a follower, you got to use a different approach. Here's an example. Toyota's been advertising the new Tundra, and they've been comparing it against some, well, fictional truck, a truck that no one actually builds. And to make themselves look good in the course of those ads, well, they'd have you believe that this is the largest ring gear you can get in a full-size pickup truck. It is, in fact, 10.5 inches across. I'd like to point out to you, Toyota, that's the Ford F-150 ring gear. It too is 10.5 inches across. Oh, and it's been in the market for years. See, this ring gear is why they've got best-in-class capability for payload and best-in-class capability for towing. You know, Toyota, if you're going to compare against trucks, maybe you ought to compare against the leader and see how it goes. You know, Toyota comes into the truck market and runs a series of commercials making fairly spectacular claims against a fictional truck. Well, let me tell you how it actually works in the real world. We brought you back underneath the Ford F-150 to talk maintenance. And to that end, we brought with us the Tundra Schedule Maintenance Guide. Talk about convicting evidence for not understanding the truck market. Let me walk you through it. First of all, should you buy their 4x4 and go with the optional skid plate? In order to change the oil, you get to remove that skid plate. On the F-150, of course not. It stays right in place. Here's what really starts to get interesting from a company that thinks it really understands the truck market. Should you buy one of their V6 Tundras and decide to tow with it, they expect you, nay, require you to change the spark plugs every 30,000 miles. For direct comparison, well, F-150, 99,000 miles. Come on, guys. Timing belts. When was the last time that was on your to-do list? Well, if you own an F-150, it's not. But if you own a Tundra, the 4.7 liter, at least once during your ownership experience, you get to pay for that bill. And trust me, that one ain't cheap. And this one just puts it over the top. If you tow with one of their 4x4s, they require you to change the differential oil, both front and rear, every 15,000 miles. For direct comparison, how does a leader do it? Well, an F-150, the rear gets changed at 60,000 miles, and the front, well, frankly, there's no requirement, but most would recommend about 150,000 miles. You know, it's interesting to me. Toyota runs a tagline, the truck that's changing it all. Maybe it should be run with the truck that's changing its oil. This is about structure, and I've really given a lot of thought of how to put that in the proper context. It occurred to me about an art museum. You know, there are the originals hanging, and in front of just about all of them, you got what, 3, 4, maybe 5 art students trying to copy that, trying to copy the original. And to be perfectly honest, from 50 feet away, when those students get done, darn it, those two things don't look pretty similar. But when you get up close, you rapidly begin to appreciate why the original is the original. We kind of have a similar situation here. It's about structure, and I realize this is buried pretty deep under the skin, and boy, at 50 feet away, is it critical? You bet it's critical, because structure plays a key role in the final, if you will, crash rating. Case in point, Ford F-150, 5-star, 5-star passenger and driver for frontal crash impact. Toyota, 4-star, 4-star. And I think structure has an awful lot to do with that. Let's talk about structure and how you can use it to not only make a vehicle good every day, but in that critical moment should you crash it. See, this additional strength up here, this additional structure makes the vehicle handle better, makes it quieter, certainly enhances its durability. But where this really goes to work and where you can begin to appreciate the engineering of the original, notice this front, what is referred to in the industry as a shotgun, basically because of its shape. But notice how interesting it's been designed, that it actually has fold points in it. See, as kinetic masses or energy are coming into the vehicle, it is the job, the responsibility of this structure to help eat those kinetic masses and to slow the impact forces heading into the passenger compartment. Let me show you what Toyota came up with. In using a structure that's half as thick in terms of material, and certainly way different in total design and size, you can see what happens here. Much smaller here, thinner in material overall, and doesn't end up in the same large box section. Now, does that get you down the road? Yeah, it'll get you down the road, but in a critical moment, all of a sudden having the original really begins to matter. You compound that engineering and tie it to the fact that you've got Ford's personal safety system, which quite frankly is as comprehensive as anything in the market today. And it makes you wonder where Toyota gets off thinking it's changing it all. Truth is, it sounds to me like they're just playing with it all. This is a stripped out interior of a truck that, according to Toyota, is changing it all. I'll say back about 15 years. This buyer no longer wants to hear the driveline, powertrain, or suspension work. They want a quiet environment. Clearly, that memo never made it to Toyota. This is their idea of noise isolation, that mat. And what does it pay you with? Let me give you an idea of what it's like inside the leader. See, it's not only a matter of engineering, it's also a matter of investment. And the secret weapon for Ford is a thing called quiet steel, a laminated steel. They're the only ones that use it. Listen to the difference. Hey, Toyota, this is the sound of leadership. You know, at Ford, one of the key aspects of truck leadership is defined by attention to hidden details. Toyota has a different philosophy. Just keep the details well hidden. Let me give you an example. Believe it or not, underneath the front of this new Tundra, there actually are tow hooks. You just got to get down on your hands and knees to access them. And you're not exactly rewarded for the journey. See, the tow hook on the Tundra is sizably smaller than that of the F-150. Now, another key issue, by having it so far back, it puts the bumper at risk by either the tow chain or a tow rope damaging the bumper. And on the topic of bumpers, when Ford says built Ford tough, they're talking about bumpers that are 25% thicker than that on the Tundra. And in terms of hidden details, well, sometimes maybe they shouldn't remain hidden. Case in point, look at the tow hooks on the front of the F-150. They're where you can get to. See, hidden details aren't in the brochure. They're in the truck, and that's where Ford pays attention. Well, welcome to the interior of the Toyota Tundra Double Cab. You know, appearances like this can be very subjective, so I'm going to try and be careful here. I am, however, going to loan my support to the media who has criticized this interior as attractive but belonging in a car. You know, there is a very difficult line to walk for designers to come up with an interior that is truck-esque, has a spirit of truck, but still has a luxury and appeal that the truck buyer is looking for today. I'll agree with the media that says that all three American truck manufacturers have nailed it, and that in particular the F-150 is the bar that everyone's trying to catch for interior design. But let's get clinical for a minute. You know, the first thing you'll notice when you get in this front row is that it has, well, less hip room than that of the F-150. In fact, both Super Crew and Super Cab have more hip room than does the Tundra. And let's talk second row for a second. Pretty important in these larger cabs. Both Super Crew and Super Cab F-150 have more head, shoulder, and hip room. Tundra offers but two interiors. Now, in a market that likes a lot of selection, that's a missed bar. To give you an idea, F-150 has 7 different interiors. Oh, and talk about choices. Tundra has 3 choice models. Ford has 5 models, plus King Ranch and Harley Davidson. In total, Tundra comes to market with 31 cab, box, and model choices. Sounds pretty target-rich until you understand to really get to the truck market, F-150 has better than double that at 64 different combinations. F-150's maximum payload specs for virtually every cab and cargo box configuration surpass that of max payload capacity of every matching model of Tundra. Interior details, missed it here as well. Case in point, no optional keypad entry system, no optional power pedals, no availability of an overhead rail storage system, and the audio system, and this is unusual for Toyota, works well, but the bass actually brings out rattles and vibrations in the door panels. In fact, at certain volume levels, that actually makes it unlistenable. Boy, I'm shocked about that one. Should also point out to you, with regard to functionality, Virtually every cab of an F-150 comes with 4 doors, and that includes even the regular cab. Mechanically, F-150 offers 4 sizes of fuel tanks. You know, at first I thought that was a click overkill. We get a lot of emails at Drivers Talk where people say, you know what, I like having a gas tank size choice. Tundra has but one. F-150 offers 12 different wheel designs from 17 to 22 inches in diameter. Tundra offers 5, 18, and 20-inch only. And you won't find, and I know this is subtle, but it's attention to detail, you won't find a spare tire lock back there ever. That said, never forget the substantial difference in prices at base price. F-150 costs thousands less for the base truck, and Super Cab and Super Crew still lead in value. I guess I'd have to close with the following thought. You know, Toyota, if you really understood the truck market, you'd know these buyers demand selection. They want to personalize their vehicles. First effort, first attempt, okay, you still got a lot to learn. Okay, now it's time to pull it all together. You've been in the lab, you've been in the shop, now let's come out here in the real world. To do that, we've come to Ford Motor Company's Arizona Proving Grounds. We also went out and bought 3 fresh trucks right off dealers' lots: Chevrolet Silverado, Toyota Tundra, and Ford F-150. We've done the lab, we've done the shop, now we do the real world. Oh, by the way, we're having some fun doing this too. We started this frame comparison in the lab. Now we brought you to what engineers refer to as the twist stitch. It makes a great measure of how the frame and suspension are likely to work together. It's Ford's assumption that anyone who buys a truck might actually like to use it like one. And to that end, that could easily include recreation. And if your recreation is off-roading, we decided to set up a scenario for you that, quite frankly, is easy to have happen. See, Mother Nature plays hardball. To that end, we took all 3 of these trucks, drove one wheel, the right fronts, over an 18-inch ledge into a sand wash. It leaned each of these trucks over 10 degrees. Now you're saying to yourself, okay, I understand that. That could happen. Makes a great comparison on frame stiffness. You paid for frame. Let's see if you got some. We added green tape to the tailgate here of the Toyota Tundra. I'd like you to compare that line to the green tape that we compared on the cab. Do you see the distortion I'm talking about? Where's the beef? Notice that the tailgate line is not parallel to that of the cab line. What you're literally seeing is the frame bending or twisting. It's a direct reflection of lack of frame strength. And bear in mind, this is only on a 10-degree angle. They actually have the courage to call their frame Tri-Tech. They ought to call it Tri-Flex. Chevrolet Silverado, certainly better, but not what you're after. Let me show you what I'm talking about. Again, green line added to the tailgate. Compare that to the green line added to the cab. Do you see the distortion? Now let me show you what leadership looks like. Ford F-150, fully boxed hydroform frame, one of the strongest in the business. What's it buy you? A truck that can tolerate this kind of use. Okay, let's compare all 3. We'll start with Tundra. Notice the difference in spacing between the cab line and the tailgate line. Notice that the distance is greater on the left. That reflects bend or twist. Weak frame. Chevrolet Silverado, though less, still happening. Their frame is certainly better than it used to be, but they're not at top of game. Now, Ford F-150. Note that the lines are completely parallel, and again, this truck sits at the same exact angle as the other 2. Do you begin to see why they are, in fact, number 1? Well, as promised, it's time for a little bit of fun. What better way to start than some light off-roading? Clearly, this shouldn't be too difficult. Or maybe it's going to be more difficult than I thought. Perhaps Toyota shouldn't have hung that gas tank down an inch below the frame. That works in cars, guys, but if you really understood trucks, that don't work. You know, even a little light off-roading is a lot more fun when you're not dragging your gas tank around. Perhaps Ford's idea of putting the fuel tank up between the frame rails is a pretty logical step. At Twist Stitch, you had an opportunity to see what we call suspension travel extremes. It makes a great static comparison of just how far the suspension will fall and how much the chassis may twist. But now what we need to see is how will those two work together in the real world. In this next series of tests, although relatively low speed, the bumps or frequency is fairly close together. And what happens next is compelling evidence. Well, this is the infamous Silver Creek, and there's not much about its personality you would like. Unless, of course, you're an engineer. What a great place to test for frame and suspension strength. We brought the Ford F-150, the Chevrolet Silverado, and the Toyota Tundra to Silver Creek for a shootout. What to watch for? Wheel action, of course body action, and how the tires actually contact the ground. Now with a weaker frame, you're going to see not only the wheels in the air more, you're going to see the box, the cargo box itself, bending more. You can see the truck's moving around quite a bit. Obviously this is not an easy life right here. Rear springs, rear shocks working very hard. And you can see the frame twist just by watching the bumper. Again, we'll go to the side. Lots of wheel action. With regard to the gas door, I guess that's an automatic on the Chevy now. Toyota Tundra, the truck that's changing it all. Right. Again, watch the wheel action. Okay, there you go. If you could put that to music, I think you'd have a pretty interesting square dance. That's not supposed to be happening. And this from a truck company that claims it went outboard like Ford on its shocks, but clearly couldn't control its overly sprung trucks. Oh, pay attention to see where the body's banging against the cargo box. That's actually not supposed to happen, Toyota. This is what it looks like when it's done right. Again, this is not an easy gig, but it's a great way to really find out how strong and how integral the workings of both the shocks, springs, and frame are. From behind, notice the tires spend a great deal more time on the ground. Notice the bumper isn't dancing all over the front end. The cargo box to cab relationship remains very constant despite driving on a half mile of brutal road. Okay, that test is admittedly brutal, but what a great way to find out right now how well a chassis and suspension are going to work together in the real world. The speeds are 25, 26 miles an hour. In the real world, you know the highway speeds are much higher than that. So we need to know now, is the truck really built tough? Do you see why now Ford F-150 is the leader? Well, we promised you a journey under the skin, and I believe we've delivered. Now, I rather suspect a number of you are baffled at how Toyota could miss the mark by so much. Let me share the secret with you. See, they understand cars, and cars are built from the outside in. But what they don't understand is trucks. And trucks, well, they're built from the inside out. You've seen the evidence. You've seen the proof that that's a valid theory. You tell me if you can think of one truck on this planet that wouldn't be improved by having the F-150's frame, or having the F-150 suspension system, or its capability, or its durability, or its lineup and selection. Everything about this truck gives it leadership. 30 years, in fact. That's what we call leadership. On behalf of everyone associated with this program, I thank you for your time together. We wish you open roads and safe motoring. I'm Rick Titus.